Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Perdue, and I am a nerd. And this is the August 2010 virtual user group meeting, which we affectionately call the water cooler. And today we have two topics plus a bonus topic. We're going to talk, or should I say Mary Jo is going to talk, about entering payments start to finish in tabs all the way through to GL, how it integrates, how you get your deposit slip together, everything you need to know to enter payments. I am going to talk about, well, I'm going to give you my tip of the day, which is how to number your manual checks. It's something I've been doing here for a couple months, and it's working very well. And also resetting users. It's something that comes up all over the place. You get that message, you are currently logged in, do you want to reset? And people tend to say no. They shouldn't, so we're going to talk about when you should reset, when you shouldn't, and how to do it. A little bit of housekeeping, though. You all have something on your screen over on the right that looks a little like this. It's a big box with a little box jutting out to the left with some buttons on it. The button at the top looks something like arrows pointing to the right. If you click those arrows pointing to the right, this big box will slide out of the way. The arrows once pointed to the right will now point to the left, and clicking that again will cause this box to come back into view. A couple reasons you may want to see this box, the main one being that you're shy and you don't want to ask a question audibly. You want to ask it by typing it in. And if that's the case, go ahead and click this to get the box showing and type a question. We will be looking for them and we will answer them as we go. If instead you want to ask your question in person, raise your hand by clicking this button that looks like a hand with an up arrow in front of it. That's raising your hand. We will see that, and at some point we will acknowledge you and ask you to ask your question right after we've unmuted you. You'll ask your question, we'll answer it, we'll make sure we got the answer that you were looking for or got it answered to your satisfaction, and then we will mute you again so that you can continue eating your Fritos or other crunchy snacks. So with that, I am going to turn over to Mary Jo, who I have to remember to give control to because I'm always forgetting that and getting into trouble. And she has control now, and she's going to take over and talk about payments.
Okay, hello everybody. I've been getting a lot of questions about how do we enter payments so that they'll come over into our GL properly. What is the procedure? Do we have a procedure for entering payments? And yes, there is a procedure here where I'm going to show you the proper way from start to finish, and then different things that can affect how things go into your GL. So first I'm going to go into tabs, and we're going to look at the payment screen. Oops, and I don't want to be on this. Let me close that. When you come in to do your payments, most of the time you're just going to come in and you're going to enter a payment here. A couple things to just keep in mind. The first thing is the transaction code that you're using. You can define several different payment codes, and depending on what payment code you use, could determine how you designate how things go over into the GL. That's one way to break things down and say, okay, if this is a retainer payment, I want to keep track of it in a certain retainer account over in GL. So I'm going to use a payment code designating that this is a retainer payment. You might just have your regular payment that you bring over, and all other payments are just regular payments, and you let tabs go ahead and split that between costs and fees and advances as it allocates it properly for you. So there's several different payment T codes that you could set up. You could actually set up a payment code for each attorney. Not necessary, because I'm going to show you another way to do that in your integration, but some of you may have already done this or have this in your system, and you're wondering, why do we have so many payment codes and things like that? Well, originally that might have been how people set that up, was to try to decide that, okay, all the payments for John Smith are going to be under this particular payment code. Some of you that are using older versions might even have payment codes for just cost or just fees or just advances. Prior to version 14, you had to go ahead and you had to tell it, the system, that this is a fee payment or this is a cost payment. You don't have to do that anymore. With version 14, tabs will go back, and depending on how you set that up, we'll go ahead and allocate that payment to the oldest fees, and then the oldest, the oldest advances, and the oldest costs, the finance charge, and then the fees. So there's all kinds of ways that you now have control of setting that integration up. So that's the first thing that you can do, is depending on what transaction code could very well determine how that payment's allocated. The other thing I want to mention on this screen is the receipt type. And I'm going to go ahead down and I'm going to put a payment in here so that's available for me. And you can see over here in your receipt type that you've got a check, a cash check, credit card, other, and client funds. And I recommend that you don't use the other only because when you go over to create a deposit slip in your general ledger, the others don't show up on the deposit slip. Only the cash, check, credit card, or client funds will do that. So the other, if you're going to create that deposit slip with it, it just makes it a little difficult. So you can either choose the cash, check, credit card, or client funds. And we'll talk about that when we go over to do the deposit slip in a minute. So you're going to come in and you're going to make sure, first of all, that you actually have money owed. We want to try to stay away from unapplied, and that's a whole other topic. But you're going to see the total due. You're going to put in your payment. You're going to choose your payment code and your type, and then you're going to go ahead and you're going to save that. I'm going to make this one a cash payment, and I'm going to save that payment. So that's the first step. We want to get all of our payments in. Now, I recommend if you're going to the bank every day, you go ahead and you set aside your payments, and you go ahead and you get them entered in the system all at once, or before you go to the bank, you're going to have all your payments for that day in. Now, if you go once a week to the bank, that's fine. Just go ahead and enter all your payments every day that you're going to enter. And on the last day, right before you go to the bank, what you're going to want to do when you close this window is you're going to want to view and print this verification list. Now, some of you have this set where this box isn't popping up. It's because somebody's turned that off and you're not seeing the verification list. But really for payments, this is kind of a necessary thing so you can keep track of who you've entered the payments for and verify that you've actually applied them to the right client. So if I say OK here and I preview my verification list, I'll be able to see all the payments that I've entered either for today or this week. And I've entered a couple earlier today, and I can see that I've got that $100 payment down here, and I've got a total of $1,300. This should be the amount I'm taking to the bank. Okay, this $1,300, I've got my 500, my 500, my 200, and my 100. You can see some of that when I'll know when I enter this. Some of that's going to be cash, some is going to be check. When I put that on my deposit slip to take to the bank, it should equal $1,300. Now, if I had some credit card payments that I entered, those payments are going to show on here, but those payments aren't going to go into the bank. They're not on my deposit. Credit cards are deposited separately. So if any of these payments were credit card payments, I'd want to take that $1,300 and subtract whatever the, let's say that the $200 payment on here was a credit card payment. I would subtract that, and then I'd write it right on the sheet here, and I would know that $1,100 was going to the bank and that the $200 payment was the credit card payment. And that's just one check and balance that you can do so that I know that these are the clients I applied these payments to, and this is what I'm actually taking to the bank. So that's step one. Once I've viewed this, I'm going to want to print it out, and then I'm going to want to go ahead when I close it, I'm going to want to delete it because I want it fresh for the next time I'm going to go to the bank. So if I did all of my payments for today and then I'm going to start another batch tomorrow and I'm going to go to the bank tomorrow, I'm going to want this verification list to be blank so that I can start over again and have a fresh list with the new amount I'm taking to the bank the next day. Now, if you forget, and I'm going to tell you, everybody, you're going to forget at least once. Don't worry about it. It's going to be by date. You can go back in and you can just cross those off. I used to just put a big X through it and then subtract at the bottom and say that was prior days. It's just so that you know what you've done for that day and you have some kind of a record that these are the payments that you put in the system today or this week. Okay? So now that I'm out of there, I'm going to finish that. Now, right after I do that, what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to go to my general ledger and I'm going to want to group those payments so that when I do my reconciliation, they'll all be in the way that they show up on my statement. Now, what I mean by that is the payments normally come over into my general ledger in my journal as individual payments. So that's how they're going to show on my reconciliation. If I open a reconciliation window right now, I'm going to see, and I'm going to get my account up here, hold on. I'm going to see that I'll have all these payments in my deposit as individual entries. I'm going to scroll down here to my deposits. And you can see there, here's those payments that I put in there. You've got a payment here for 100, 200, 500, 500. Now, when I go to try to reconcile this at the end of the month or the following month, I'm going to have to go back and try to remember, all right, which clients did I put in on such and such a date? I might have a deposit for a total of $1,100. Now, which clients did that belong to? And it's much harder to go back and try to group those and check them off than if I just go and create what we call a deposit slip in GL to group them. You can see up here that we've got deposit number 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13, and even 14 down here. These are all deposits that we've grouped together from previous days that we've made deposits, and this should equal what went into the bank for each time. So to create one of these deposit slips, instead of having them all out here hanging, what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the Journal Entries tab, not the icon, the tab, and there's a little icon here called Deposit Slips. So if I just click on that, I'm going to go ahead and create a new one just by hitting my tab key on my keyboard. It will go ahead and assign the next available deposit number. You can see it says New. I can put the date of the deposit. You can change that, whatever. If you forget to do it and you need to come back and do it the next day, you can back it up to the day before, but it's best to just do it that same day. The deposit ID is simply the date in reverse. Maybe you went to the bank in the morning and then later on you had a really big check come in and you have to do another deposit because you don't want that sitting in your drawer. You can come back and you can just name this next one 02 or 01, or you can put even letters in here. It could be something totally different. So and then you're going to choose the bank account that you're going to put it into, and then we need to select the recipients that are going to be on this deposit. So if I hit the Select Recipients button over here on the side, I can see these payments that have come in here. So I've got my $100 payment, I've got the $500, I've got this other $500, and then I can go ahead and I can say OK, and here's my $1,100. Okay. If I had credit cards, maybe you had several different credit cards that came in one day and you run a batch at the end of the night, so you would know that you had 3 credit cards that were each $100 a piece, and the total batch for that day was $300. So your merchant account is going to go ahead and deposit $300 for, August 31st. You could actually come in and you could make a deposit slip for credit cards as well. Maybe you use the client funds feature in tabs, and the payment that came in actually went to client funds. You can even create deposit slips for client funds. So just keep that in mind. But remember what I said, there's no designation for the other. So if you use other, they won't show up over here on the receipts. So just be careful with that part. If you have a money order or something like that, you can put that under cash or checks, however your firm's policy is. It doesn't matter. Just make sure that they show up here. So now that I've chosen my payments here that are going to actually go in the bank, I've got my $1,100, I can go ahead and I can save this. Once that's saved, now when I go into my reconciliation, I can see that now I probably have a deposit number 15, or it should be down here, and there's my $1,100, and that's going to match what was on my statement. So it just makes it a lot easier to come in here and check these off when I have them looking just like my statement. Now remember, everything that you deposit for clients will come over into that receipt. Now what if you get an extra check? I have this question quite a bit. I get a refund from OfficeMax because I returned something. They give me a check, or I get a refund check from the Bureau of Workers' Comp for an overpayment, and I'm putting it in the bank at the same time as this client money. Well, all the client money is here, and I'm usually making a manual journal entry to go ahead and put that Bureau of Workers' Comp check in. So we can go ahead and we can create one of these. And I can say that this is a refund, BWC refund, and I'm going to go ahead and debit that account for $500. If I mark the, 500 I guess, a receipt right here, and I go ahead and I tell it that it was a check, that will include it on that list so I can select it as a recipient. Remember, again, if I choose other, it won't. But if I use cash, check, credit card, that will show up over there on my receipt, so I can actually include it. So that will be one deposit, so then my deposit is correct, just like my statement. Are there any questions on that? I know I'm kind of moving a little fast on that, so does that make sense to everyone? And of course, you'd save this into your other side of your entry, but as long as you've got your bank account, your debit side, and you mark it as a receipt, it will be available for you to include on a deposit. Okay. Don't have any questions on that, so I'm not going to save that one. So that's how you can include those non-deposits. Now, another thing that, and then I usually print that deposit slip as well. And then when I go to the bank and I deposit that money, I get my receipt, and then I come back and I staple all that together. That way I know that this is the client money that came in. It went to these clients. I created my deposit slip, so I know when I reconcile at the end of the month it's all going to be grouped, and then I have my receipt to verify that that money actually hit the bank. That way, any day of the month, I usually file that away. Any day of the month, any day of the year, I can have my managing partner come over and they can say, hey, Mary Jo, I want to see what the receipts were for February 16th. Could you pull that out for me? And I have that. So I've covered myself, I've covered my firm, and everything is where it should be. So that's the key there. Now, the other thing I wanted to touch on is the integration. How do things come over into GL, and where do they go? We have it in version 14.2, I believe, it came out where we can actually really get detailed on how we do our integration. We can come in and we can configure payment integration just about any way we want to. We've got up to 2 different categories here that we can choose how we want it to come over. If I want to go ahead and do my fee accounts, I can say that I want it to come over by the payment T code that we designated. I can say that any of the fees that come in for this type of payment, maybe I want to have a transaction code for, you know, it's endless. Whatever you would have your payment T code designated as, I could actually do it by that. And then I could do it by working timekeeper. I could do it by client category. If you wanted to put it in all your real estate cases, go into this account, and all of your bankruptcy cases go into another account, I can designate by client category that this is the bankruptcy cases, and I want to divide that up, and I want to put it in a specific account. So you can get extremely detailed on how you put things in here. Then by clicking on the fee accounts, I can come through and I can actually designate how that is done. So if I come in and I say, I want a new one, and I'm going to use payment T code. There's only one in here. That was probably a bad example. Let me go back and let me choose something that we actually have more than one of. I think we had this by category. So let's come in here and I can say that I want to have the client category be wills and trusts. The working timekeeper is Michael Jensen. I'm going to always put it into my bank account. Now, you can have separate bank accounts that you're putting this in. Maybe you have a separate account that you put the will and trust money into. And if they're defined in your chart of accounts for your operating accounts or your cash accounts, you can go ahead and choose different bank accounts to put different types of payments into. We then can also credit whichever account here that we'd like. Maybe we've set up a fee income account for wills and trusts, and we want that to go into that specific fee income account. I could go ahead and I could choose whatever that fee income account is that I want to put that in. And then, of course, you've got your different journals. This would be a receipt, or if you just use the general. And then that one's designated. You can also choose different accounts by attorney. I set one up here, so maybe I want to have the client category be tax law, and I want the working timekeeper to be Michael Jensen. And then I also want to have my bank account. And then for this fee account, I want to just designate it by attorney. And I've set one up in here to be fee income for Michael Jensen. And I could have as many of these down here as I want. I could have a fee income account for every attorney. I could have a fee income account for every category. However you want to split this up, I could come in and I could say that. And I can designate all of these things here and get very specific on how my fees come in. I can also then say if it doesn't fit any of these criteria, I just want everybody else, regardless of what category or working timekeeper it is, I want all of them to go into just my general fee account. So I'll put that in my fee income, and then I can finish that up. So, and that would be how I can choose that. Now, the other thing I can do here is my cost types. For my cost accounts, maybe I want to split and put my expenses in one account and my advances in another. Or again, you can split this by category, you can split it by location, you can do it by transaction code or any of the timekeepers. And then again, you've got 2 different ways that you can do that. And then I can define my cost types over here. So I can tell it that in this case we've got all of their expenses and all of their advances going into different accounts. So we didn't designate, that they're separate. You could have, again, an expense account for each attorney or each category of law. You could have an advance account for each attorney. and you could, as many as you need to do here, you can set that up. So there's all kinds of things that you can do in here with your integration and how as long as you've got an account set up in your chart of accounts, you can map any of this to come over and go into your GL how you want it to. So this can get a little detailed, and sometimes we could do a little figuring here, but Paul and I are always available to help you out if you get stuck on it. And it's just a powerful tool that I think a lot of our clients don't utilize as much as they could. So you know, check this out in here. If you have any questions on it, let us know. Do we have any questions now, Paul? Okay. I think that's all I'm going to cover for today. If you want to switch to yours,
well, my topics are much easier than that. I get to talk about resetting users and manual check numbers. First off, resetting users. Let's say that you are, let's get out of here, and we're in Practice Master. Let's say that for some reason my computer got shut down last night, and so Practice Master was on when it got shut down, and as far as Practice Master is concerned, I'm still in there. Now I'm going to leave this open here to simulate that happening, and I'm going to go and sign into Practice Master. And it doesn't let me do that because I'm signing in as P. Purdue. That's interesting. Well, we're going to actually back out then, and how can I do this? You know, I hadn't really. I'm going to end task. I'm going to go into, I have to simulate my computer having been turned off. And I didn't give that much thought because I forgot that STI changed it so that if you accidentally try to go back into the software, it will recognize that you're already in there. But here we go. I've just simulated me resetting my computer with Practice Master open. I think we're going to find that when we go in here and try to sign in as P. Purdue, it's going to tell me I love it when a plan comes together. Okay, we're going to talk about this, and we're not going to look at it. Everyone has seen this. They go to sign in, and it says, duplicate user IDs found. Do you want to reset this user? That's what it would have said if I was able to simulate this here. It would have said, Paul Purdue is already in here. P. Purdue is already in Practice Master. Do you want to reset this user? Now, what typically happens is the first time this comes up for you, you say, yeah, my computer shut down on me last night. That's why it's there. And what happens is STI, in order to protect you and your firm from people that reset users when they shouldn't, they added 3 check boxes that you have to check then on the second screen that basically say, you know that this user's not really in there. You know that if you reset this user while they are really in there, that you may have data problems and some other thing that sounds scary. So people usually cancel out then. And what happens is every time they sign in, then it says, you are already in here. Duplicate user IDs are found. Do you want to reset this user? And because they had that experience where they got scared because of those scary checkboxes, they say, no, I don't want to reset the user. Well, you do. If you get the message, duplicate user IDs found, do you want to reset the user? And you know that you're not in there. Now, maybe you were working up at the front desk in reception, and you were signed into Practice Master there, and you forgot to sign out when you came back to your desk. Well, then, no, you wouldn't want to reset the user. You'd want to go back to the reception desk, sign out of Practice Master, go back to your desk, and when you signed in, it wouldn't find a duplicate user. Also, every once in a while, we run into a firm where the administrator or the billing person needs to do something, so they want to get people out of Practice Master, and sometimes people don't listen. So they go through and they randomly reset those people because they say, well, you know, I gave them 10 minutes and they didn't get out, so I'm going to kick them out. That can be very troublesome. That can cause data problems. But if you know that you're not really in there and that it just thinks you're in there, you should say, yes, I want to reset the user. It'll show you a list of the users with you listed twice, and one of you will have an asterisk next to you. That's you right now as you are trying to sign in. Highlight the other one, the one that does not have the asterisk. Hit the reset button and answer those 3 check boxes by checking them off and saying, yes, I know I shouldn't do this pell-mell. Yes, I know I shouldn't do it when I'm still in there, which I'm not. And yes, I know that if I do when I'm not supposed to, that it could cause data problems. You know that you're not really in there, so you know none of these things are going to happen, and that will reset you. If you don't, the firm has only purchased so many user licenses for Practice Master. So if you're logged in twice because you're afraid to reset yourself when you should be, and a couple of other people are, then you're using 3 extra licenses that you don't really have. And eventually somebody's going to be told you can't go into Practice Master because all your user licenses are used up. So when it asks, duplicate user IDs found, do you want to reset, think to yourself, am I really in there? Did I leave the reception desk and forget to sign out of Practice Master? Am I signed in someplace else? Some people have ways to access their computers from home, usually using something like a terminal services server. Am I still logged in that way? Did I forget to shut down when I left home this morning? Now, if you're not, say yes, I want to reset, and then go ahead and acknowledge those 3 checkboxes, knowing that you're doing the right thing by getting rid of that duplicate user. Any questions on that, Mary Jo? Okay, good. Let's talk about manual checks. When you go in to write checks or enter invoices into accounts payable, sometimes those represent things for which you're not going to print a check. For instance, if you have a Visa debit card that's tied to your bank account, and occasionally you pay for online purchases or you pay Office Max or Office Depot that way, you don't write a check, but you still have to enter that transaction so that it can be reconciled. Another example is bank service fees. If your bank charges you $10 each month for your checking account, that's a manual transaction. It's not something for which you have an actual check that's being printed. Okay? So when you add those, let's add one real quick. Let's say we're paying Nelco, and we did it with a credit card. So we paid them $10, and it's a manual check, and it asks us for a check number. Now, the very first thing that it defaults to is your next check number in your printed check sequence, but you don't want to use that because that's a real check. Some people put 0 in here, and that's bad. And we'll talk about that in a second. I, for years, have been recommending, my system thinks today is 11/17/09, but let's pretend today's 8/31/2010. So I have been recommending something to the effect of 2010/08/31. Okay. The problem with that is you may have several manual transactions, several manual checks with that date. Okay. So I had been doing, and actually I would do it without I would do 10 for 2010, 08/31, 01, and then 02 and 03. Okay. Now let's back out of this for a second. Let's see why do we care about that? Why do we want to do that? Well, later on, if you need to void a check that's already been posted, we'll go ahead and say it's a check that was written to clerk accords. I know there's some in there. There aren't any manual ones, but that's fine for purposes of what we're talking about. And then it asks what check number, okay? And it lists all the checks. There's only one in here with a check number 24995, but if there were 14 of them, it would list them all. Now, what if you put all your transactions in as check number 0? All your manual transactions, every one of them just goes in as 0. Well, you could still pick from this list, right? It tells you down here, well, maybe it doesn't. It does at some point. It's going to void all checks that have this check number. So even though you can pick from a list of all the manual transactions you did for that particular vendor in that bank account, and maybe all of them have a check number of 0, if you pick one of them and they all have a check number of 0, you will end up voiding all of the 0 check numbers. So every check and every manual transaction needs to have a unique number. Okay? So what do we do? Well, what I've been telling people for years is what I just told you. We'll write a check here. We'll go down, we'll say it's manual, and we'll put in 10/08/31. That represents the year 2010, the month 08, and the day 31. And then we put in an 01, and an 02, and an 03. Well, that's great if you know what manual check numbers you've used on those days every time. But let's say that we made some manual checks for 10, 08, 31, 01, 02, 03, and then 4 days later we get the bank statement and we see there was another manual check that needs to be entered from 10, 2010 0831, 8/31/2010. We don't know if we've used 01 or 02 or 03 without going through a complex series of steps to try and figure out what the next number is. We'd have to print a check register by check number and look for the manual check numbers there. And it matters because if you happen to mistakenly put 10083101 and you've already used that and then later you need to void it, you may be voiding 2 checks from your system without even knowing it. Okay? So here's what I do now. I have a list that sits on my desk, and in a firm that has multiple people that are writing checks, this just needs to sit in a central location. It could be on a computer somewhere that people access. But I have printed this out, and every time I use one of these manual check numbers, starting with 999, 000, 01, 02, 03, 04, obviously all the way up in this sheet up to 99 or 100, I just check it off the list. And that way, I have this next to me every time that I'm putting in manual checks from my check register, manual checks from any source, and I always know what the next available manual check number is. This will also increment. If I'm putting in a whole bunch of manual checks in a row, it'll just keep incrementing for me. So I put in 999, 00023 as being the next one, and then I have 5 more manual transactions. It will automatically default to 24, 25, 26, 27. That way, I have a kind of a check and balance, something that I check off against to make sure I'm never reusing a manual check number. It works ultimately much better than the original way that I thought up of using the date with the 01, 02, 03, because with that, I didn't have anything to tie it back to. Here I do. It's really just a simple infrastructure change that really has made a lot of difference for me. It's the difference between spending 10 minutes trying to enter one manual transaction because I don't know what the next number is versus simply digging through the 14 pages that I have to dig through on my desk to find it, finding this list, and checking off the next number. So are there any questions about that, Mary Jo? Okay, we're doing good today. We don't have any questions. That means people are either eating their crunchy snacks so loud that they can't hear, or they're sleeping, or they're playing a Tetris, or we're just doing a good job of explaining things. Either way, a couple of last-minute things to think about. Mary Jo and I put our heads together every month to come up with topics for the virtual user group meeting. And every month it becomes a little more of a chore because we've been doing this for a couple of years now. And we would like to ask for you to suggest things that you think we should talk about. Things that trouble you, things that you haven't been able to figure out, things that you think, well, I do it this way, but maybe there's a better way to do it. Things that you just never understand what the proper procedure is for. Anything that comes to mind as being something that you think that we should cover in one of these virtual user group sessions. Keep in mind, we usually cover 2 topics in a virtual user group meeting, in a water cooler meeting, and they usually last anywhere from 10 to 15 to 20 minutes, depending on their complexity. So naturally, we're not going to teach all about the entire statement, end-of-month statement printing process in a virtual user group meeting, but we might talk specifically about emailing statements or printing statements to individual PDFs in a batch run, because that's something that we can cover in that short period of time. If you have suggestions, send them to watercooler@attorneycomputersystems.com. watercooler@attorneycomputersystems.com. And the last thing I'd like to ask for your help with, we're about to enter a pre-release testing phase for tabs 3, Practice Master, and all the accompanying accounting programs in version 16. There's some very neat, significant changes being made, the ability to automatically email statements, not just print them to PDF and attach them to an email, but have tabs send them out. The ability to have every client also be in the related parties file in Practice Master. All sorts of neat stuff built into the upcoming release of Practice Master and tabs 3. This is your chance to get those features early, to see them before anybody else, to even have an opportunity to comment on how they're constructed and maybe even shape how that product looks and feels when it finally comes out for general release. So it's what we call a pre-release testing phase. In the past, we've called it beta. We may not even be calling it beta this year because Tabs and Practice Master puts out pre-release testing products that are very, very stable. And the word beta, if you've ever heard of bad experiences with beta, it has a certain negative connotation. We've never had a bad experience with a beta for Tabs3 and Practice Master, so we're probably going to change the name to pre-release. But if you want to be one of those people that gets their hands on these new products before anybody else, and offers suggestions and gives feedback on how things work, all you have to do is send an email to beta@attorneycomputersystems.com. B-E-T-A, beta@attorneycomputersystems.com. If you have questions about the process, if you'd like to do it, if you merely want a list of changes that are coming up in version 16 because you're thinking maybe you'd like to do it but you want to look at it first, just let us know by sending an email to beta@attorneycomputersystems.com and we'll get you set. So if there are no more questions, we will end it with that. Everybody have a good afternoon, and we will see you next month. Thanks much.